Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, good morning. I am Bruce Ball, the author of Quinn's Dilemma. It also says on the cover, which is really true, trapped between the Justice Department, the mob, a notorious union brings intrigue, violence, and murder. And this is what it looks like. I think that many authors, I congratulate them on the fact that they can come up with something that's unique, has a plot, and so on and so forth. This book is really 90% of my life. Was like me writing a diary. And it does have a lot of intrigue, mob violence, and I think that you'll find it extremely interesting, considering the fact that it was real. What happened was that I was working on Wall Street and finally got tired of being in the middle of the crowd, so to speak, and all the buildings and everything else. And I was offered a job at another brokerage firm to see if I could not resurrect, for lack of a better term, an office that was last on their list and about to close. And one of the ways that you do that when you take over the job is that you try to recruit stockbrokers from other firms. And one that I did recruit was doing a fabulous job. He was generating about $1 million a year in revenue because he was dealing with the union. And he decided he was going to come over and work with me. And needless to say, that helped bring the office out of the bottom. But it also brought with it some interesting things, to say the least. There's a saying, be careful what you wish for. And I, of course, was wishing that the office would turn around and be successful. And another saying in the book is, may you live an interesting life. Oh, brother, was it ever? When you're dealing with a labor union that's tied to the mafia, and their union leader was taking bribes from the broker that I hired, you wind up in the middle of controversy, shall we say, in that you are questioned by the FBI, by federal prosecutors. You also get to meet with the head of the mob and the union leader, who was at that point in time on trial for bribery. It turned out that the broker that I hired was paying him about $250,000 a year, and he was convicted. And somebody's writing something. Great to be here again, Bruce, and I think you should congratulate yourself for coming up with this book. Well, I appreciate that, but I didn't have to come up with it because I actually lived it. This really is 90% of exactly what happened in my life. As I said, the broker was kicking back $250,000 a year, and there was a federal prosecutor who was bound and determined to put the head of the union, who was at that time a fairly old gentleman, and I use that word loosely, and they convicted him. And he got out of it the old-fashioned way. He died. And the union got taken over by a friend of mine, and I have to say that he was very, very legal in the fact that he was running for election one year in the union as the union president, and I offered him $200, and he says, "Are you crazy? That's bribery." So you have to be careful. And here is one more comment. Good day, Bruce. How did you meet the mafia's I think it's exception. Forgive me, this print is so small. Well, let me tell you something. I did at times some stupid things. I used to go to lunch every day with leaders of the mafia, the head of the union, and other people, most of which were members of the mafia, but they were the workers. And whenever they didn't want me to know what they were talking about, they would speak in Italian. The interesting thing is, when I was in college, before I graduated, I took Italian as a course, which was required to take a language, and I thought Italian would be interesting. Oh, brother, was it ever? And we were sitting at lunch one time, and they were talking in Italian, and I thought it'd be nice if I could talk back to them in Italian. And when I did, they turned their heads to each other, and I could see it was, he knows everything. Maybe we should get rid of him. Well, I told them, I really don't know what you're doing. And I was just trying to let you know that I understand your language. And they said, well, that's nice. And I still at that time came across my mind that maybe they were going to decide that it would be better off if I wasn't around. Thankfully, they didn't, because I'm still here. We have somebody else saying, who do you think are more dangerous, the mafia people or the federal government? That's a good one. I have to say, I think the mafia is more interesting, is more dangerous in the fact that they kill people for any reason that they can think of. And which was why I was so nervous and considered myself so stupid for speaking in Italian. But to go on in the book, it's a genuine story that I lived through, dealing with the mobsters and corrupt union, and until my friend became the leader after the notorious leader died. And it became a little bit more safe, shall we say. As I said, I offered to try to offer him $200, and he considered that to be no, they're going to take that as a bribe. To give you an idea of how some of this worked, I got a call from a gentleman who said, I'd like to meet you down at the Best Western Motel. And I said, well, okay, what are we going to talk about? He said, well, we'll talk about it when we get here. So I went down, and it turns out the two gentlemen in the room were FBI agents. And the first words out of his mouth was, you're doing 7 to 10 years for bribery. And I almost laughed because I haven't bribed anybody. And they said, you can tell us what's going on and all that. And I figured, no, I don't know what's going on because I don't want to get killed. I wound up hiring the wife of the union leader at that time, and I had a request from the mob's hitman to hire his wife. And I must say, both those ladies were very, very good, very nice, hard workers, and totally unlike their spouse. And we have another message here. Is this based on your experience? And if so, how old were you when you got entangled with these dangerous people? I would say I was in my 40s. That was quite a while ago. And what happened was I retired, and some of you may already know that when you retire, life gets to be a little bit boring. So I decided, well, gee, I lived the curse, an interesting life. Why don't I write a book about it? And so I did. And obviously the names of the people in the book are not the real names of the people, because I didn't want to wind up in court being sued. But strange things happened. I had a gentleman come up to me who was in the mafia and said, we've got a load of, I forget what it was, coming. Would you like any? And I said, well, what are you getting a load for? He says, because we're robbing the truck. That was the general tendency of the group. And I had the opportunity to ride in the car with the mob's hitman. And I looked in the back seat and I saw a little bat. And I figured, well, he can't be playing baseball with this. It's probably only 3 feet long, if that. So I asked him, I said, what's the little bat in the back for? He says, he looked at me with daggers in his eyes and said, why don't I pull over and I'll show you? In other words, I'll grab the bat and beat your head in. I said, no, I don't think so. I'm fine. I was just curious, trying to make conversation. And to say that I tried to stay friendly with the mob and the union is really true. First of all, because I didn't want to lose the broker that I had, who was contributing $1 million to the resources at the office that I was at. In fact, the office went from last to second in the firm, because when you hire somebody like that, we got a new office, and other brokers decided that they wanted to take a look and see what we were doing, and maybe it would be interesting, and that they would be of a mind to switch their firms, and it happened. So we went from virtually nothing into having a very, very successful operation. And all I had to do was be careful with the mob, be careful with the union, and certainly be careful with the mob's hitman, because I really didn't want to greet him in a dark place. We have somebody else. What was Wall Street? What was Wall Street during your time? Well, Wall Street really hasn't changed, and as far as I know, it's pretty much the same now. I haven't been there in many years, but at least the firms were working. And that is to say that they were operating, at their capacity. And one time later, the firms that I worked for, they filed for bankruptcy and went out of business. And I said, well, it's not my fault just because I worked there, and that's just the bad luck. And somebody else is asking, are you committed? I would wish. I will wish something. Will Parker Quinn choose? Well, I'm being Parker Quinn, and things that I chose were try to stay safe and not get trapped up in all of this stuff. Try to negotiate and maneuver around without getting on the wrong side of the mob's hitman, to say the least, which is one reason why I hired his wife. And the book goes through all the experiences that I had during that pretty much decade. And I think you'd find it very interesting. Somebody else is asking, what did the mafia something look like? Are they like in the movies? Oh, yeah. Trust me, they are like in the movies. You know, if you're making a movie, you want to make it interesting, thrilling, make people go, ga, 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 you know, when somebody gets murdered. And that was what it was. They were robbing trucks and killing people, and it was a very dangerous situation that I managed to survive. And I think you'll find in the book, I actually wrote this book twice. The first time I looked at it, it was okay. Then I took a course with James Patterson, who is a famous author, and he gave me the insight in how to make it compelling. And now I've got people telling me that when they started to read the book and they got well into it, they couldn't stop because one thing leads to another. And trying to, that is, trying to stay out of the middle of this, certainly not going to trial, and certainly not getting hit by Mr. Murderer. It is very interesting. And it gives you some insight as to what goes on in groups like the mob. And okay, we have somebody else here. So there are union members that happen to be also members of the mob. Yes, not many, because one of the things that you have to realize is you don't have to work too hard when you can steal all the money. And that was the case. And I really had to be careful, to say the least, because I certainly didn't want. I got called into the senior federal prosecutor in another city, and he said, "You know, we've now got you. You're doing 7 to 10 years." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Bribery." I said, "I'm not bribing anybody." He said, "Well, it's a matter of new issues." Now, new issues are the shares of companies who do not publicly trade. In other words, you can't buy into any old company. Only the ones that are on the stock exchanges and the over-the-counter market. And the reason that people would be interested in it is that when they came out, let's say at $10, they may well close the day at $30. That's a nice profit. And what happens is you give those types of shares to your best clients. Well, one thing I didn't do was give them to anybody in the mob, because that might be considered bribery. Only the federal prosecutor didn't know that there was a code in every employee's account that prohibited from getting these new issues to go in there, even though they could make a lot of money. We have somebody else. Why do you think labor unions are always tied with the mafia? First of all, I don't think that all labor unions are tied to the mafia. All I did know was that this one was. I can't speak for all of the other many unions that are out there, but this one had been with the mob for a long time. It was this interesting city in that half the city was Italian, the other half was Polish, and there were many, reasonably large number of families that were mafia. And trying to stay alive in that environment is, shall we say, challenging. I did find that going through and keeping my big mouth shut, except for that one stupid time when I spoke Italian to them, it was a lot better and easier for me to avoid the dangers that they have. And somebody is writing, what was your feeling, I believe, making the head of the mob, meeting the head of the mob is he fierce or what, or calm? The head of the mob, and when you meet him, he is very calm, very social, unless you get pulled into his office because you've done something stupid that might endanger his group of criminals. And so I certainly had to be careful because, as I said, it's on the cover of the book, trapped between the Justice Department, the mob, a notorious union brings intrigue, violence, and murder. So if it's the type of book that intrigue, violence, and murder we will find to be interesting, then I suggest that you take a copy, get a copy of this. You can buy these online at this Reader's Magnet, who is the publisher for the book. They have a site where you can buy a book from them, Barnes and Noble, and Amazon. So there's plenty of places to get the book. And I assure you of one thing, you will find it interesting, to say the least, because there's a lot of action, a lot of, I won't say mystery, but a lot of, gee, I wonder if he's going to get killed in the book. And I think that it will find, it's got a 5-star rating on Amazon as an example. So, you know, I think somebody must think it's good, and people that have read it and told me that they liked it. As a matter of fact, one person said I couldn't put it down. I started in the morning and I read the whole book throughout the whole day and the evening. Well, I guess that's a good thing. Because it's what you want. You want people to wonder what's going to happen next. Who's going to get whacked? What happened to so-and-so? And that is what this book is all about. Trying to stay safe amongst a herd of killers, and doing all the right things. And I mean right things, so that you don't get dragged into the federal prosecutor's office and have nothing to say and no reason for him to be wrong. I would like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you get the opportunity to order the book, as I said, online, Quinn's Dilemma. And for your information, the leading character in there is Parker Quinn, who happens to be me. So I Parker Quinn is a nicer name than Bruce Ball, so I just figured, no, in reality, I didn't want to put my name in there. But I think you will find it compelling. At least that's what I've been told. And you'll find it to be the kind of book that you wonder, what did he do? What happened? What's going to happen now? And it looks as though we're winding up to the end of our time. And I wish you all the best and hope that you like interesting things to read, because I certainly guarantee you're going to find this one really interesting. I wish you all the best, and that will be it for now. So the clock tells me.